this is Ashmita from ISS Classes, and today's class, let us discuss about this question number 1E. Now, you all must be wondering from where I have just picked up 1E number question. This is from the ISS and the IES paper of the of 2022 we are talking about, and this is from the General Studies paper. All right. So if you all have been following my earlier videos, you all might have noticed that I have been discussing one answer, like one question per video. So in today's video, we are going to discuss about 1E, which is from the General Studies paper of 2022, as I have told. Non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement mark a strategic shift in the freedom struggle. So they are talking about the importance of the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement, which marks a strategic shift. Like in the freedom struggle, it was going on in a particular way, but because of the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement, it has shifted. Like the focus has shifted to something else. So is it true? We need to discuss about that. Now, before going over to the discussion of the answer, I would like to tell you that here you need to write in 200 words, all right? So you need to cling to this word limit. You cannot just exceed it. And yeah, here I'm going to tell you about certain points that you need to like incorporate in your answers. And yeah, here, and definitely you can score good marks if you do that. So if you get these type of questions, once again, like related question, of course, topics are related in every year. Like every year you're getting the same topics, but just the questions differ. So if you get a similar kind of questions related to non-cooperation movement or civil disobedience movement, then you can incorporate the points that I would be telling you over here. So let's start our discussion. Firstly, what you're going to focus on is the introduction portion. Definitely, you need to talk about the introduction, like what is non-cooperation movement, and then you need to talk about what is the civil disobedience movement. Before you go over to the body or before you go over to the more detailed answering technique, you should be first focusing on the introduction. Which like leaves a very good impression on your like invigilators, on your supervisors, or on the person who is checking. So try to like attract the examiner, like a person who is checking, from the first line itself. So you need to first introduce your topic. The non-cooperation movement was launched on the 5th of September. Yes, talk about the date when it was launched, date, then you talk about what is it all about, how it started, you can talk about that. So in the year 1920, it was launched by the Indian National Congress, that's the INC, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, under whose leadership? So here another question is arising, that is by whom? In September 1920, in Congress session in Calcutta, the party introduced the non-cooperation program. So where is this non-cooperation program like established? This was at Calcutta in the year 1920. The period of the non-cooperation movement is taken as September 1920, which I have just marked, to February 1922. It signified a new chapter in the history of the Indian freedom struggle. The non-cooperation movement was launched in the wake of a series of events, including the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and was called off because of the Chauri Chaura incident of 1922. So what started? What started it? What started the non-cooperation movement? And what called it off? Like what like led to its end? Next comes the civil disobedience movement. The civil disobedience movement was once again led by Mahatma Gandhi in the year 1930. You need to talk about the year, which is very important. It was an important milestone in the history of Indian nationalism. It had a more visible impact than the non cooperation movement 10 years earlier. So, you have talked about both of these movements. You have provided your intro. Next, you need to talk about the details, okay? Focus on the details because you need to write 200 words essay answer. In March 1930, Gandhiji wrote in the newspaper Young India, so this was this newspaper, that he might suspend his civil disobedience or law-breaking movement if the government accepted his 11-point demands. But Lord Irwin's government did not respond. So Gandhiji started the civil disobedience movement. Now, so what started it? Once again, I would talk about this thing. What started it? Talk about it in a little bit detailed manner. Like last page only, we talked about why it started and why it just called off, why it was called off. That is the non-cooperation movement. And here we are talking about the civil disobedience movement. Civil disobedience movement was initiated under the stewardship of Mahatma Gandhi. Talk about Mahatma Gandhi. It was launched after the observance of the Independence Day in the year 1930. So when was it observed? The civil disobedience movement commenced or started with the infamous Dandi March. What started it? Once again, you can talk about what actually initiated it or what started it. When Gandhiji left the Sabarmati ashram at Ahmedabad on foot with 78 other members of the ashram for Dandi March on 12th of March 1930. From here, you can also get certain highlights for the Dandi March. After reaching Dandi, Gandhi broke the salt law. It was considered illegal to make salt as it was solely a government monopoly. The salt satyagraha led to widespread acceptance of the civil disobedience movement across the country. This event became symbolic of people's defiance of the government policies. Okay. So yeah, you can talk about these two, and yes, this is how the initial thing all about the freedom struggle just shifted with the coming of the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement. Firstly, the freedom struggle was focusing on throwing out the Britishers, but after these two policies came about, we were focusing mostly on just throwing away the government because of illegal stuff that they were continuing. Okay, so we got a lot of points to overthrow the government officials, the British government. Okay, so through these movements, we got like points, like more evidence to throw out the government of the Britishers. Okay, so that is how the entire point got shifted. So at least start with some lines of freedom struggle, like the freedom struggle is focusing on just throwing away the Britishers, and talk about a little bit of nationalism among the people due to songs, music, and all sorts of write-ups and protests. Then you talk about the sudden shift because of the national movement and because of the non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. So yeah, then talk about the shift, and then you talk about the introduction, and then you explain these two. So that's it for today's class. We're going to meet once again in our next classes with more such important discussions regarding this general studies paper. Meanwhile, if you have any kind of doubts or queries, you can just post down your comments below in the description box. We will help you out with all your answers. So if you want to join our classes also apart from that, you can do that by visiting the website of www.sauravsasclasses.com. There you will get all the detailed solutions of all the exam papers that you are focusing on. We will be uh, providing you with answers, solutions to the previous year's question papers, so solve the unsolved papers and also practice the sample papers. There would be doubt clearing sessions. Then there would be like live sessions, recorded sessions, crash course facilities, scholarship facilities, and whatnot. So if you need the guidance, you can just also call us at the phone number which is provided in the description box below, or you can also go over to the beginning of the video. There you will get the contact details also. And you can just call us, and if you have any kind of questions to ask, you can do that through the help of a phone call also. So that's it for today's class. We're going to meet once again in our next classes.